You think about money, what's the first emotion that comes up? Is it calm? Is it stress? Or is it that feeling where you don't even want to think about it at all?
Because what's interesting is most people assume that if money feels heavy, it must mean they're doing something wrong.
And the truth is, for most people, it's not a math problem. It's not a discipline problem. It's not even an income problem.
It's a psychology problem.
Money is one of the only areas of life where your upbringing, your fears, your identity, and your habits all collide. And nobody ever teaches you how to make sense of it.
So instead, people keep trying new budgets, new strategies, and new advice.
Without ever understanding why they react the way they do in the first place.
And that's why two people can make the same money, live the same lifestyles, and one feels totally at peace while the other feels constantly behind.
In this episode, we're not talking about spreadsheets or tactics. We're talking about the patterns underneath the decisions.
The stories you tell yourself about money, the emotions that drive your choices, and the reason certain habits keep showing up even when you know better.
Because once you understand your money psychology, money gets quieter.
And when money gets quieter, everything else gets clearer.
So if you've ever felt anxious about money, avoided it, or wondered why it feels harder than it should,
This episode is for you.
this is the Fi Guys. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Fi Guys podcast, the show where we dive deep into the world of financial independence and personal finance. Whether you're just starting out on your journey or well on your way to financial freedom, we've got the insights and strategies you need to achieve your financial goals.
In each episode, we'll provide actionable tips and real-life success stories to inspire and guide you on your path to financial independence. So, grab your notepad and get ready to transform your financial future with the Fi Guys podcast. Let's get started. The Fi Guys is a podcast dedicated to providing general information and insights on a wide range of wealth-related topics. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and do not constitute personalized financial advice.
The content provided in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It should not be considered a substitute for professional financial advice. Your financial situation and goals are unique, and the information provided here may not be applicable or suitable for your specific circumstances.
We, the host and the guests of the Fi Guys, are not acting as your financial advisor. We are not aware of your individual financial situations, risk tolerance, or investment objectives. Any decisions or actions you take based on the information provided on this podcast are your own and made at your own risk. I may be a financial advisor, but I am not your financial advisor. And now that the lawyers are happy, let's get started.
Before we talk about strategy or numbers, I want you to notice something. I want you to think about your money right now. What's the first feeling that comes up? Calm, tension, avoidance, guilt. None of those are wrong. Most people assume that if money feels heavy, it means they're bad with money. But more often than not, it just means they've never been taught about how to understand the relationship with it. Today's podcast, we're talking about why money psychology really matters. One of the biggest mistakes that I've seen in my practices and my coaching is that we make money a purely logical thing. And if it was, that means that two people who made the same income and had the same expenses would feel the exact same way. And we know that they don't. So Dom, before we get into this, we've talked about money psychology a few times, but I thought this was the time to bring it back up again. What do you remember from those past podcasts that you want to get into in this pod?
Well, money psychology is such an important part of finance. And, obviously, we're a finance podcast. We're going to stay rooted around finance. And obviously, psychology is a huge part of everything we do in life. But I'm going to try my best to really hone in on the finance aspect of it. From what I've learned from this podcast and in the last episodes we've done on psychology and whatnot, that the way we act and the results we're getting spawn from the routines that we were taught and the routines that we were kind of allowed, whether that's from a kid, from a child, as you finally get money, you get your first job and what you do with all of your money. And, these psychological reruns are just constantly going consciously and unconsciously. And it's one of those things that if we don't pay attention to them, they kind of they operate in the background and You're like, well, I don't know. Like we said, it's like, I don't know why I'm stressed about money, even when I have money. I don't know why I'm angry that my spouse is spending this much money when well, we have enough money, right? So there's so many things that go into the mind. It's such a complex machine. So for today's episode, I think it's, like you said, Chris, it is very important to revisit this since we're in a new chapter, a new season of the year. And it's one of those things that I don't know if it can be mastered, right? But it can be improved. And that's what we're kind of looking for today, for the end viewer, for the end listener, is we're not looking for this episode's not going to solve all your psychological problems. Probably not, probably not. I wish. We
We
probably
would charge
charge
a
more.
lot more.
Yeah, yeah, right. There'll be a link down below for the money and the credit cards. But today's episode is about making steps to improvement, right? And just like we say in the episodes all the time, we say on the podcast all the time, is 1% better. Let's just get a little bit better today so that tomorrow can be a little bit better. And that's really the goal with today's episode. So I'm excited to kind of kick it off, Chris, and really, or let you kick it off. And let's get into some tips and tricks and kind of understand this crazy thing we call the mind.
Yeah. I think you mentioned something really important there, and that's that there is no end to this game. You're not going to be like, all right, I listened to this podcast and I did it. Now I understand my money psychology. I understand myself and I can move forward. You also talked a lot about repeating the same patterns and trying to gain that unconscious awareness. I like to think of there's that iceberg, right? And the thoughts that we have on the day to day, the thoughts we're aware of that we're having, that's what's sticking out of the water. But underneath it is this giant chasm, which is your unconscious. And all of that down there is the thing that's really controlling what thoughts you have on the surface, what thoughts you can actually see out of the water. There's an old quote from Carl Jung. He was the father of analytical psychology. And he said, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to dictate our life and we will call it fate. So I think a lot of people, and let me know if you need me to break that down, Dominic. Do you think that's pretty clear?
I listen. I don't mind you breaking that one down. That was a deep one. It hit me right in the head, and now I'm like, damn, that was good. Let's repeat it. Let's keep it. Let's hammer that home. I like that one. Yeah. Could you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So again, the quote is, until we make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to dictate our life and you will call it fate, or we will call it fate. And what it's saying is that we have these unconscious processes that are going through our minds at all times. And those come from our childhood, come from our biology, from our psychology, from our culture. And they're the things that dictate everything to us. So the thoughts that we even have the ability to have access to is dictated by the unconscious thoughts that we've already had before. And if we keep on finding ourselves repeating these same patterns, it's because your unconscious is comfortable here. So it's only giving you access to thoughts that it's comfortable in. That's the reason that you'll see, I don't know, your best friend who keeps on ending up with the same person over and over and over again. And I don't mean the exact same human being, but I mean the exact same stereotype of a person over and over and over again. And the pattern is, it's you. You're the person in it. And when it comes to money, I think so many people think that money is just purely mathematical. It's purely logic. And that works in a vacuum. That works for economic teachers. That works for financial advisors to say like, oh, we're all just these logical beings that go through life. But I think if we know anything about us, is that we are extremely emotional. We're extremely dictated by crowds, by our feelings. So money is emotions far more than it is mathematics. And until you understand that, just like Carl Jung said, until you understand the emotions to striving or driving each one of your decisions, you'll keep repeating the exact same patterns, no matter how good your plan looks on paper, no matter how much you think like this time it's going to work. Until we're able to understand why is it that I do what I do, you're not going to be able to break it. So clarity doesn't start with numbers. It starts with self-awareness. And I think one of the hardest things for people to be able to understand when it comes to money is even getting that first part of clarity. What's your thoughts, John?
Well, I was just wondering, a lot of people, like you said, they have that analytical brain. They get the numbers brain. And a lot of other people have different brains, right? And I'm just kind of curious, Chris, in your expertise and in your field and what you've seen in the world, people that are good psych, I'm going to butcher it, but people who are psychologically good with money and good with themselves, do you think they have more of a numbers brain, or do you think they have more of like a creative brain? And do you kind of see which one is a little bit better, or is there anything weird that's kind of stepping out and standing out to you?
Mm. I think this is where it comes down to. I've worked with many engineers who have very mathematical brains, very analytical brains, very logical
Mhm.
brains. And the reason that I've seen that they're usually better with money is because they make substantially more money, first off. But the biggest reason is that they are less emotionally attached. Where people who are more creative, again, the inverse is opposite, where they're usually making less money, but they are more emotionally attached to the money. But my guess is that that is more correlational than causative. Is that if they were making the exact same amount of money, then I don't think that we'd see those issues.
Mm.
I think it is just a resource problem at that point. Because I've met a lot of people who have no emotional connection to money. Like they're not concerned about it at all. And, you know, that sometimes is almost as much of an issue as people that have too much of a connection. So I think no matter which way you go, there's pathology on both sides.
Do you think that, having no attachment to the money, it's just a number, it's whatever. Do you think that's something that happens when you're grown up with, hey, we have food in the fridge, right? We've got nice cars. Like, do you grow up kind of a little bit more wealthy, or do you find that it can come from any background?
It's more common from people that came from abundance, but I have worked with some people who didn't come from anything and still have no worry about money. And I think the reason for that, and what I've discovered with those types of people who didn't come from much, is it's very much a nihilistic view. Why even try? Like why try to get ahead? Because we're not going to get ahead anyway. So if we get money, we should spend money. Don't worry about it. Just like get it out of here because I don't want to think about it. Where people with money who grew up was like, I don't have to think about this. Somebody else will come and save me. Somebody else will take care of this. And again, neither one of them is right. Neither one of them is wrong. But do they serve you at this time? Do they serve you at this junction in life? Which I think most people were living in the past with, oh, well, mom and dad just supply everything for me, or my teacher's going to come and help me out. Or if I'm about to fail the test, my professor's going to come and say, like, hey, you didn't do very well. Let's try this again. But in reality, that often does not happen. There isn't someone coming who's watching out behind the back saying, like, hey, Dom, before you buy that expensive trip, do you really have the budget for it? Have you set aside the money? No, we have a system, an economic system that says like, yes, you should spend that money and put it on credit. Like
Yeah.
pay for it later. Don't worry about it right now. And we see where that gets us.
So it seems like anybody who applies themselves and really starts to learn themselves and know who they really are and discover these underlying routines and habits and psychological kind of replays can be good with money and can be good with, their finances, right, Chris? If being good with money is for everyone, right? There's not like a secret group that only you got to drink the blood or whatever, and you could be good with money. It's like anybody can do this, right? There's no like skill paywall.
No, there's no paywall. There's no skill tree. There's nothing like that. It really comes down to understanding how you relate to money. And once you understand how you relate to money, we can begin to make changes. Not that anyone's right, not that anyone's good or bad. They're just patterns. And there are a handful of ways that there's a handful of common ways that people tend to relate to money. And just like I said, none of these we're about to talk to are good. None of them are bad. It doesn't mean oh, I'm this one, so I'm better than you, and you're that one, so you're definitely going to fail. They're just patterns. And once you're able to name a pattern, money starts to feel a lot less stressful and starts to make a lot more sense. Because we're able to see like, oh, this is my pattern. And this is how people with my pattern, this is how we relate to money. And just like a relationship with your spouse or anything like that, they go through ebbs and flows. And just because maybe you look at your spouse right now or your partner or your best friend, you're like, we're not in the best place right now. We're fighting. We came into a disagreement or whatever. Therefore, it's like this forever. We're now going to be perfect. No, you ebb and flow in relationships. But the messed up thing about money is that money is just an object. It's like having a bad relationship with your hammer or a bad relationship with your desk. That they're not doing anything. They're just there.
Yeah.
So the problem is the relationship you have with yourself. The problem is the relationship you have with this inanimate object and the way that you feel about it and the way that you feel it feels about you, but it doesn't feel anything about you. So it's even simpler than it was a relationship with another human being.
That is a very interesting way to look at it. I like the way that you looked at that, and I like the way you framed that, right? You wouldn't get mad at your hammer because you're not good at your hammer. You're like, there's no reason to get mad at your money for being bad at money, right? It's to look inward to fix what's outward. And I think that's actionable. I think that's really usable. Um, and a lot simpler said than done.
Yes.
But like we said, we can't solve all the problems in our 45-minute episode on Monday. But I like what you were saying there, Chris. I really like what you were saying about how, money is an inanimate object and we kind of have to treat it like that, not get too attached with it just because we're spending time to make it and we're spending our knowledge to do and, bring it back in. It's just a resource, just like anything else. And I like the way that that is kind of framed in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think imagine this. Imagine we're sitting inside of a room, like you and I, Dom, and our audience members with us, and we sit there and there's a table. And I have a dollar bill, and I throw a dollar bill on the table. You and the person's like, okay, whatever. Like $1 doesn't matter. And I throw another dollar and another dollar, another dollar. Now it's $20, and no one's gonna really jump. But if I kept on throwing dollars on that table, at some point, it could be $1,000, could be $10,000, could be $1,000,000. You are gonna have an emotional reaction. Like that money, like I need to kill these people and take that money right now. And if you really look at it, the money didn't change. Like it was still the exact same dollars, just at some amount you had a feeling of this must be mine. I have to do something. I need it to feel safe, to feel free, to feel whatever. I think a lot of people, we look at our relationship with money and we say, oh yeah, it's easier to have a relationship with money than it is with a spouse because the money is constant. It's not going to change. It doesn't have any feelings towards you. But in reality, most of us go through life thinking, oh, our relationship with our spouse or other people are easier because I'm not the problem, they're the problem, and they have to change. But I think we know intuitively that money is not going to change because it doesn't have the ability to. So that means that we have to change. And that's one of the hardest things because we don't understand why we do what we do. And that's why being able to understand why we relate to these things is so important. That's the reason that money psychology is so damn important.
Yeah, I'm excited to keep it going. I'm enjoying this podcast, and I hope the rest of our viewers are too. If you are enjoying it, please feel free to like the video. If you're on YouTube, share it as always with a friend, with a family member, and really spread the word of financial independence and, really help more people with their money psychology. Everybody, there's nobody that I can think of at least that's like, nope, I'm done. I'm good. I'm solid. Right. We're all work in progress. Right. Even our fearless leader, Chris, right? That's what we love most about Chris is that he's always changing. He's always evolving. He's always improving. And that's really the way that we want to live is to constantly be improving and constantly moving the needle 1% better and getting that better every single day.
Yeah. So we're not going to go through an exhaustive list of
Yep.
the common patterns that I see around people with money because there's actually quite a few, but we're going to talk about the 4 core ones that I see. And the first pattern that I see when it comes to money is that money equals safety. And I want our listener to answer this question. What does money equal to you? What does money mean to you? And I think a lot of us will say, oh, well, money is just money. But if you really think about it, you'll think that money means something. And maybe it'll be one of these 4, maybe it'll be something different. But the first one is money equals safety. Because for some people, money does represent safety, security. Even when things are technically fine, there's many people in this world, myself included, that feel like something could go wrong at any moment. And then they're having this huge amount of anxiety, despite they might have some stability. They're constantly trying to hoard more cash, hoard more resources. And they have this fear of spending money because you don't know when that other shoe is going to drop. And this pattern, I think a lot of us, we fear this pattern because we think it's all about greed. Oh, this person just wants more. They want more. They want more. But in truth, it's about protection. It's about protecting themselves, their partners, their future from the scary, scary world out there that is inherently unpredictable. Dom, when we think about safety, before we move on to the other three patterns, can you think of anyone in your life that might, besides me, that might fall into this and things you may have seen?
You know, I won't lie to the viewers. I try to be as honest as humanly possible. When you were talking about the 4 common money patterns, I took a peek at the notes because I was like, I don't have one that it jumped out to me, right? But I remember something my dad always used to say, and I used to always ask him, like, "What is money to you?" And he would, I mean, I could call him right now. He'd say the same thing. It'd be early, right? But um, I don't want to. I'll just say it. He would always say, "Money is freedom. Money is freedom to me," and that's why I'm saying I might have peeked at the notes a little bit because that is the second one. But no, for me, I kind of align more with it being more freedom rather than safety. Um, but I can see why some people view money as safety, right? It's the food that we eat, it's the clothes that we wear, it's the house that we live in, and I can totally understand that, and it makes most sense to me. That makes the most sense. I feel like that's like the most like day one human. What do we need? We need food, water, shelter, and some clothes, maybe some tools to make some fun stuff, right? So safety, I feel like, would be the most common one to me. Um, but also, I can definitely see where there's a lot of maybe psychological history tied with money that equates it to safety. And I think that's something that could be interesting to go down that road a little bit, maybe for our viewers and like thinking it's like, well, why do people feel like money equates to safety? And maybe that's going to be my little question for you guys. But Chris, why do you think, money is equal to safety for a lot of people? I mean, and even for yourself.
Yeah, I kind of go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and to be totally honest, I didn't expect to talk about this. So I don't remember each one of the junctions. I believe there's 5 or 6 on it, but it's these different ways to be able to self actualize, to be able to understand why you make the decisions you make. And the first rung is safety and security. Like without human beings feeling safe and secure, they're not going to be able to ascend to these higher planes of being able to understand themselves, because if you're focused on where's my next meal going to come from, you're not going to be thinking about like, oh, what should I do with my 401k, or like, how is my investment allocations? What's going on with these things? If you're focused on just survival, you can't get out of the fog. You can't see 100 feet ahead of you when you're looking, trying to see through the fog 5 feet ahead of you. So when it comes to money and safety, a lot of these people come from insecurity, you typically in their childhood, or just hearing that from their parents. One of the questions I like to hear or like to ask people is, what did your parents say about money? One of the most common things that people say to that is, oh, we can't afford that. We can't get that. We can't afford that. And to a young person, especially a child who doesn't understand how money works, like they just see things, they want things, they ask why. And when you ask, like, why can't I afford this? And then your parents got mad at you because they felt triggered. And like you're saying that I don't make enough money or that I can't provide for you. When just as a kid, you were just asking a question that you didn't understand the reason to. If your parents would have maybe sat you down and said, hey, I make this much money. Let's say it's $10. That costs $1. That means that's 10% of what I make is going to just this one thing. And we have all of these other things that we need to buy and be able to pay for so that we can keep the roof over our head, the water on, the electricity on. What do your parents say? Because it's simpler. No, we can't afford that. Stop being greedy. Stop being selfish. We can't do that. And then they get mad at you for asking another question. So a lot of people like that relate money to safety. They were really related to control, being able to control the environment that they did not feel in control of when they were younger. Because I think when we think about our childhood, I remember fondly all these things. And it's very difficult for most kids because they are not in control. And when they're even asked, hey, what's going on? Just so I can feel a semblance of control, you're told, shut up, sit down. The big people are in charge. And now we take that into our reality today. And we have those exact same feelings. But now we are that big person who is ideally in charge a bit more, but we're still relating back to that child, that kid that was told to shut up, sit down and just listen. So now we're trying to exert control, safety over anything that we possibly can. And when there's something like money, the great facilitator of anything that we're allowed to do in this life, or most things we're allowed to do in this life, you're damn right that you're going to try to control it. You're damn right you're going to try to protect it. You're damn right that it's going to make you feel safe if you have more of it. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense, actually. And also, I pulled up the Maslow hierarchy, and the first one that you were talking about was the psychological needs, right? The survival aspect, the food, the water, the sleep, the air, the shelter. Um, you know, if you don't have those things, right, nothing else really matters, right? That's kind of like a day one, that's like a baseline thing. But again, money buys food, money buys water, right? Money doesn't buy sleep, but more money might help you sleep more. Um, but yeah, no, I think you're spot on with what you were saying. And I think I don't think I know that whatever you're taught, you tend to repeat it unconsciously or consciously. And what's sad is when you were like that kid where it's like, "Hey, what's going on? Are like the market crashed? Are we going to lose the house?" And they tell you we lost, everything, right? Well, that stays with you. That's stuff that you remember. And sadly, for most people, that's the type of stuff that gets passed down because we all know there will be another crash. There will be, another downturn. That's just how the world works. So when your kids ask you, you have the choice to make. Well, do I imprint on him for a lifetime that fear of, hey, we all your toys that those are gone, right? No more birthdays, no more Christmas, right? Is essentially what you're telling a child. Or do you instill in them, it's like, hey, yeah, you're a part of the team, little guy, and here's what's going on, and you might not understand it, right? And I don't know if there's a correct way to kind of address these things, but I think it is very important how you present information. Sometimes it's more important about how you say it than what is being said. Like if I'm screaming at Chris, it's like, I just had a bagel this morning. I freaking loved it. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. My heart rate's going up. It's like, why are you so angry? It's like, not angry. I'm just really happy. It's like versus, hey, Chris, I had a bagel this morning. It was amazing, man. You should try bagels. It's a great way to start off the day. 10 grams of protein, right? So I think oftentimes, I got a little off topic on that one, but um, I believe it's so important how we say it, even more than what we're saying. But continuing on with the Maslow's hierarchy, number two, it was safety needs, right? It was the physical safety, the financial security, the health, stable housing, and predictable routine. And I don't know if you want me to pause there as we kind of go through more of our common patterns.
Yeah.
You want to go on a
So,
pattern
yeah,
two?
let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and pause right there. And I think you can understand why most people get stuck in safety because that's the base reality. That's like where we have to be. Most people that were food insecure or housing insecure as kids end up getting stuck here. And you can think like, okay, I'm stuck here. Then there's not many people that continue to pass on. So let's move on to pattern number two. Money equals freedom. This is what Dominic went ahead and talked about. That means to him and his father. For some people, money feels like freedom and it's a relief. It's permission. It's breathing room to be able to live the life that you want. Spending money brings relief because I get to exact my freedom on the world. Structure feels restrictive, saying, hey, we should stick to this budget. We should be able to do these things. That's where people usually get into problems in those types of things. And then money is tied to escaping doing what I don't want to do. This type of pattern isn't about being reckless. It's about chasing how money makes us feel. Does that sound correct to you, Dom, based off your interpretation of money equals freedom?
Yeah, to me, the definition, it's similar. It's just doing what you want to do when you want to do it, and nobody can tell you elsewhere. And I was actually having a conversation about money and freedom with my dad last week, and we were driving around. I had the day off. It was like a holiday or something. Um, Maybe I just didn't work that day. And it was like Tuesday at like 11 p.m. and we were going to pick up a table from on Facebook Marketplace. And dad was saying like, isn't this nice? We get to kind of spend this time together, we go get this table and it's Tuesday, it's 11 a.m., right? this is what money buys you. Money buys you the freedom. And he was telling me, it's like, if I wasn't smart with my money, we wouldn't be able to do this. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Even though the table was for free, but you understand, right? Um, and he was telling me, it's like, yeah, money equals freedom. That's what I was taught as a kid. And it was funny because what I responded with, I'm like, I agree. I was like, I don't have, I understand the framework. I'm just not there yet with the money, right? I still got to catch up. Um, but I'm at least awake, understand that money is freedom for me. Right? That's what it means to me. But I think it is. Do you think people kind of transition from maybe the first pattern to the second pattern to maybe the third or fourth? Or do you think it's something that, hey, I was taught that money is freedom. This is how I see it forever. Y-
Ideally not.
Yeah.
Ideally, you don't see that, because especially when we get into prop patterns number 3 and 4 that I see, I would hope that you're not going to stay there. It's not like, oh, you go from pattern 1 of safety, then you go to freedom, then you go to whatever number 3 is, number 4 is. You actually don't want it to be that way. Ideally, that you can transcend those things, or you might come to say, this is my relationship with money, and it's just ever evolving. Because money, it's kind of like seasons, right? And seasons of life. Sometimes they ebb, they flow, they come in, they go out of your life. And that's just the way it is. But typically the underlying thing is a little bit different. One thing I do want to talk about that I thought was important with you, when it comes towards money is freedom, it's all about the season of life that you're in. Like for your father, he is at that season of life where he can spend money in order to feel the way that he wants to. But sometimes where I see there's a problem with people, or where there are things that can be problematic, is that when someone says like, oh, I want to spend this money because it makes me feel this way, but they're not at that stage yet. Like, I want to be able to spend my money because I have this money to be able to take a week off because that makes me feel good. It's like, but you don't have that ability yet. In truth, you haven't quote unquote earned it. Like you're not there yet.
Yeah.
So you really need to be careful. Like if you want your freedom, if you want to be able to have that, you first need to be able to get there. And that's where I see a lot of people where the money equals freedom thing can lose the plot.
Do you think that, people kind of jump the gun a little bit too quickly? Is that's kind of what you're saying? It's like, well, yeah, he's 65 or 63 or whatever. He is 65. It's like, well, I want what he's doing. Right. So, well, if he goes on a cruise, well, I want to go on a cruise too. Like, but you're not. A lot of people kind of jump the gun to kind of keep up with the Joneses. And I think maybe that's part of where a lot of people go wrong as well, is they're trying to keep up with people who, if this guy's driving a Ferrari and I'm driving a Corolla and he's going 110, it's like, oh, I want to keep up with him. It's like, you're not at that stage yet. Right? There's nothing wrong with being in the Corolla stage, right? But you're just not at that level. Um, but on the same note, I feel like sometimes people, when they spend their whole life in like pattern 1, like of safety, where they're kind of hoarding cash a little bit, when they do get a lot of money, well, they're just saving it just to save it, right? Because like you said, money is safety. And to me, like, it's funny because like I've seen that before, and I'm like, oh man, you're wasting money in a weird way. It's like you have it, but you're not using it. It's like it only has utility if you use it. Um, but I do understand the idea of keeping cash and keeping money, and because it is safety, and that's kind of like their version of a safety blanket, safety net. But yeah, I'd love to get on to pattern number 3. I mean, we've already talked about 2 of them. Maybe our viewers have kind of connected with 1 or 2, but the third one is not a great one to me. But we'll get to it. Let's do it.
Yeah. So number 3, money equals self-worth or identity. Sometimes money quietly becomes your scoreboard. This is who I am. This is how good of a person I am. And how you're doing financially starts to feel like how you're doing as a person. And when you see someone like this, that means that their net worth is tied to their self-worth. And comparison drives every decision that they're making. How am I compared to this guy, compared to this, compared to this? And financial mistakes feel like a personal attack. When money becomes your identity, pressure is inevitable. You will feel the pressure all the time. Have you ever met somebody like this, Dom? Or can you think of somebody maybe in, I don't know,
In movies or TV or something?
movies or TVs or politics that
Yeah, right. Yeah, 100%. Um, it's not this is why I was saying that I'm like, it's not my favorite one, right? I think I'd rather have, people have money equate to safety rather than identity or worth, because truly your self-worth, your identity should not be determined by how much numbers you have at this place, and that place is a bank, right? It's such a weird way to live to me. Um, I can open up my calculator, I can put in a million numbers. Doesn't change anything. Granted, I can't buy anything with my numbers on my calculator, but no, I think it's I want to make sure I say this right. When I when I think about equating money to identity or self-worth, it makes me feel like the person who adopts that kind of tendency doesn't feel like they have any self-worth. And like initial self-worth, like they were born into nothing, they are nothing, but because of the money they have, they are someone. And in this world, a lot of people are treated like that. And if you walk into, you know, somewhere, you dress nice, you look like you have a nice outfit, you drive up in a nice car, people respect you more, right? Versus the later. And I think this is a real this might be one of the more common ones in society, but maybe not as like the main one, but there's definitely an undertone in society, especially in our like capitalistic um world we live in. I don't know, Chris, do you think this one I feel like this one's a lot more popular than I initially thought when reading it. What do you think about this one?
yeah, this one's super popular. This one is the reason that I don't work with these people typically, the people that have worth and identity, is because, well, first off, they're not going to come and talk with someone like me. But more importantly, these are the ultra successful. These are the people that are typically very, very successful because they have to make it. They have to. There is no better driver than necessity. Like my life, like everything is tied to my ability to make this money to be able to feel like I am worthy of even living. And I want to talk a little bit about where this comes from my patterns of what I've seen people who are in this identity. It's that people that are growing up, their parents might be like, the only way to be good is to succeed. You have to be the best. If you're going to play this baseball game, if you're not starting every game, if you're not pitching every game, then you're nothing. If you're not getting straight A's, then you're failing. The only way to succeed is to be the best. You have to kill or be killed. And that works in sports. That works in some analogies, but that's not the way you want to go through life. You don't want to go through life trying to kill everybody else in order to be the person on top of the ashes. But so you go through life and you have to be the best. You have to be the best. You're constantly competing with everybody to win on this scoreboard. And maybe in sports or in academics, there is a scoreboard to be able to put yourself on and be like, look at, I had the best grades. I had the best pitch. I had the most touchdowns. I had the best whatever. When you get into real life, you're an adult now. What scoreboard do you use? What do we use as a society? Do you say, oh, well, my relationship with my kids is the best. I have this really great relationship with my spouse. I love my animals. I love myself. I'm able to sleep well at night. No, no one talks about any of those things. We all talk about one thing, wealth. And when you think about wealth, even when I said that, everyone's mind immediately went to numbers. How much numbers do I have? Boom, there it is. There's my scoreboard. There's my talk in the academic class. There's my valedictorian. There's whatever it is. But wealth means so much more than just the numbers. It is everything else I talked about. It is that relationship with your spouse, relationship with time, relationship with yourself, with your animals. But we as a society don't like that because that stuff is not quantifiable. I can't quantify how good my relationship is with myself compared to Dominic and be able to show him with a piece of paper, look how much better I am than you. But with numbers, it's quantifiable. And what seems to get measured gets improved. So that is the reason that most of these people are where they are. It's just a natural progression from their upbringing of This is the way that you succeed. Okay, then apply it to new thing that it may not apply for anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. That's a sad one to think about. That's a sad one to think about. I was thinking while you were speaking, just trying to understand this, and it's like sometimes someone can have all the money in the world and still not be wealthy based on, my standards or your standards, Chris, right? Good relationships with your family. That's wealth to me. I mean, I know all of you guys can kind of relate to what I'm talking about here when, you come home and you're at odds with your spouse or your family. I mean, you're in the middle of a squabble, you're not talking to each other, right? You know what that feels like, right? But if you had 100,000 in your bank, it's like, well, cool, that's awesome, but I still have this issue that money isn't solving, that money can't really solve. And what I've come to learn from this podcast, this is why it's so important to continue listening to this episode and always really try and take notes on the different episodes that we're kind of putting out. But what I've learned is that money only solves money problems. Money only solves money problems, right? So if you got a bad relationship with your son, well, money isn't really going to solve that. And it takes time, effort, energy, love, all these things that money can help facilitate, right? But in the end, it can't do the legwork for you. And like I was saying a few minutes ago, it's a sad, sad, sad life if all you have is money and you have no wealth. And to me, like I said, wealth is family, wealth is freedom. Like I said, I'm more of a number two guy, but I mean, what do you think, Chris? What do you What do you think about this? I mean, where does a person go if they're in that category?
It's delinking that thought. Once you understand the relation of, oh, this is like, I believe this is the way I relate to money, then you can begin to say, is this serving me? It's all about the question. It's first being able to open yourself up to ask the question. And that's the reason we're talking about this, is so our listeners can ask the question. Am I this, or this? And is that serving me? Let's move on to pattern number 4. Pattern number 4 is probably the most common thing that I see. Then it would be safety, but it's probably the most common. It's money equals stress or money equals shame. For a lot of people, for probably most people, money just feels heavy. So when things feel heavy, when things feel scary, when things feel stressful, when things feel shameful, what do we all do? We avoid it. It's our instinct to avoid things that make us feel bad. Avoiding accounts or avoiding conversations, feeling behind or embarrassed, or just procrastination. When it comes down to this, avoidance, it isn't laziness. It's emotional protection from the feelings of stress and shame. That feeling of shame is deeply psychological, deeply difficult to get past. And only through really understanding why is it that we feel shame can we begin to understand the patterns, be able to change those patterns.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.